Does anybody here, have you noticed that gasoline prices are going up? You noticed that just a little bit? What's the least amount that you can remember? Shout it out. The lowest price you can remember in your lifetime. 20 cents a gallon, all right? 19 cents. Boy, you got some white-haired folks here. That's been a while. I can remember back in the late 70s, early 80s when I was just, well, actually late 70s. I was high school with late 70s. I can remember pumping gas. How many of you guys pump gas in a full-service station? Remember those days? Fill her up, sir? Regular? What would you like? Back before we had unleaded, you know, I had the thing on the belt, the cha-ching thing. You know, clean your windshield, check your oil, all that stuff. You don't find full service like that just about anywhere anymore. It's a lot of fun. Gasoline back then was around $1 a gallon, I guess, and I can remember it being, you know, a little bit lower than that when I was a little younger. But I remember back in the early 70s, my dad was driving truck, and we had a big gasoline shortage. You remember that? Particularly up in the Northeast. We had a huge gasoline shortage and big lines, but Dad brought home a different story. Some of his trucker buddies were driving tankers out into the desert and dumping gasoline. Can you imagine that? Why would they do a thing like that? Well, there's all kinds of reasons for shortages. And we've heard some reasons from these stages before. Let's hear another side of the story. Let's hear from an expert, somebody who was right there and saw some things that'll blow your socks off. Please welcome to the stage, Lindsey Williams.
Hasn't this been a wonderful Quest Q2 event? The planning has been superb. Don't you think so? I have never seen a convention planned quite. The speakers, there's no such thing as a second-rate speaker. I mean, everybody here has been great. Quest, we appreciate you. God bless you, and thank you for the wonderful job you're doing. Someone asked me the other day, don't you think it's time to brush down the cobwebs and start all over again? And I said, brush down the cobwebs, I think it's time to kill the spider. Today you will hear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and I hope you go away from here knowing the rest of the story. If you have a pencil and paper, and I'm sure you do sitting there, please jot down one expression that will summarize everything that I'm going to say in the next hour and a half. The standard currency of the world is oil. It's not the American dollar. Neither is it the euro. It also is not the ruble. How did it begin with me? It began, may I put it this way, since I'm at Quest. My quest began in 1970. I was a missionary in the state of Alaska. I'd been a Baptist pastor for the past 12 years. When I arrived in Alaska, I heard that they were going to build the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline. That was that 800-mile, 4-foot diameter, largest pipe ever constructed on the face of the earth for the carrying of crude oil from the monstrous new oil find at Prudhoe Bay on the Arctic Ocean, where it goes to 130 below zero in the wintertime, and I've never understood why they can't find oil in a better place. But, and it wound up in Valdez, Alaska, and I heard that 25,000 pipeliners were going to converge on the state of Alaska to build that pipeline. 25,000 of the customest, drinkingest, orneriest folks on the face of the earth. What would you do if you were a missionary? The first thing that came to my mind was they must need some spiritual guidance. So I went to Alaska Pipeline Service Company and I said, don't you need a chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline? They said, chaplain, we don't know what to do with you. Well, I guess persistence paid off. I kept going back and back. And finally they said, okay, we'll give you the northern 7 camps. I'm sure they thought I'd last about 3 months with those pipeliners from Prudhoe Bay up on the Arctic Ocean. And they said down to Galbraith Lake, 7 work camps. Go up there and see what you can do. Well, I did. I lasted 6 months and was still going good and having a great time. And Mr. R.H. King, personnel relations man, came to me one day with Alaska, and he said, "Chaplain, you're saving us thousands of dollars of counseling fees that we aren't having to pay. It's amazing what attitude you're creating amongst the men in the work camps." And he said, "We would like to offer you executive status." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well, that means you can go any place you'd like to, see anything you want to see. We'll give you a vehicle, an executive pass." And he said, "We would like to invite you to sit in on our board meetings in an advisory capacity in order to help the relationship between management and labor." Now, this had to have been the providence of God, because there is no possible way that a little insignificant, unknown aviation missionary could have been allowed in the meetings with men that come from the IMF, the World Bank, and the top oil company officials of the world. But for 3 years' time, I sat in their board meetings, and it changed my life. I will never be the same person again. If someone had asked me in 1970, "Lindsey Williams, do you believe there's a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world?" I would have said, "Who are you, a John Bircher?" And I would have laughed at them. If someone had said to me in 1980, after I wrote my book, The Energy Non-Crisis, "Do you believe there's a group of people on the face of the earth who tell the president what to do, dictate to the Arabs what they'll give them for a barrel of oil on any given day, and tell Congress what bills to pass?" I would have said, not only do I believe it, I sat and listened to them talk about it. I remember one night, I went back to my dorm room. I'd been with these people all morning. There's one other part to this story. In 1980, they trusted the man who had gone to them by the name of Mr. Henry Kissinger, and I'll tell you the rest of that story in a moment. They trusted him because, after all, the Arabs 50 years ago were nothing but nomads roaming the deserts riding camels. They didn't know anything about international finance, and Mr. Henry Kissinger had told them back in the early 60s, "Buy gold, buy gold, buy gold." And in 1980, they had bought gold by the train carload at $800 an ounce. And in 1984, the price of oil went to $11 a barrel, and gold went to what? Come on, some of you gold bugs. $300 an ounce. Did you know it was done by design and planned in advance? And I was told 3 months in advance that they were going to do it, that gold would go to that point, and it did. And the Arabs, in order to support their economies and keep those who were under them, the sheikhs and sheiks, had to sell their gold. And who did they sell it to? The same people they'd bought it from in 1980, they had to sell it back in 1984, and it was all done by a design plan, and I knew it 3 months in advance, and I dared to record it. There is nothing that happens by chance.
There is no shortage of crude oil. The only shortage is honesty in Washington, D.C. And there's no need for us whatsoever to have gasoline prices the way it is. There positively is something that can be done about it, Kate.
What can be done about it, though?
Well, first of all, we can produce from our own soil. There is no reason for us to be beholden to the Arab countries of the world. You know, the world is scared to death of the American dollar because of what's happening to us. The standard currency of the world is crude oil. It is not the dollar, neither is the ruble or the euro or the yuan. And as a result of our dollar collapse, and it is going to collapse, by the way, the American dollar is going to zero. Mark my words, you'll see it happen. And as a result of the collapse of the dollar, nations in the world have lost billions of dollars because of this decline. For instance, let me give you the example of the nations in the world that as of March the 19th of 2008 have said we're not going to use the American dollar any longer as our reserve currency. Now, very briefly, the reserve currency. You want something for a rainy day. You'd like to have a backup. So you go down to your bank, lending institution, and you say, "I'd like to deposit so much money in a savings account." That's known as a reserve currency. It's for a rainy day, for the time you lose your job. Well, nations have that also. And always, as long as it has been as sound as the dollar, the nations of the world have used the American dollar as the reserve currency. No more. As of March the 19th of 2008, listen to the following lineup of nations that says we are going to use other currencies besides the American dollar as our reserve currency. Now, when these nations don't use the dollar as their reserve currency any longer, that means they aren't buying our national debt. The dollar is not in circulation. The world doesn't want it, and the dollar will collapse as a result of it. Here's a lineup of nations.
Okay.
China, Kuwait, Switzerland, Ecuador, Syria, Libya, South Korea, Argentina, Iran, Russia, Malaysia, Brazil, and some Balkan countries just within the past 6 months have said we're scared to death of your $9.2 trillion national debt. We don't like the interest rates that you're giving. The dollar is collapsing. And as a result, we aren't going to use your currency as our reserve currency anymore. It is so drastic out there, Kate and Richard, until I shudder to think that the American people don't know the issues.
Everything happens by design plan. Everything in this world, government, politics, gold, oil, everything. The Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline initially flowed in 1977. Watch this now. I'm not going to get into this subject much for lack of time. The Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline initially flowed in 1977, 1.7 million barrels of oil. The field had at that time 1,500 pounds of natural artesian pressure. The ecologist said that year the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline and Prudhoe Bay oil field will be depleted in 20 years' time. 30 years later. The field still has 1,500 pounds of natural artesian pressure. They're flowing 1.4 million barrels of oil in that pipeline today. The field has replenished itself. There is no such thing as an energy crisis. There is no such thing as a lack of crude oil. And the Russians proved why when they drilled their deep Kola 3 wells to 42,000 feet and finished up the last one last year and found in the heart of the earth massive amounts of oil such as man never dreamed of. And the fields of the earth in many areas are replenishing themselves just as they're doing at Prudhoe Bay. The only lack that we have today is not a lack of oil, it's a lack of honesty in Washington, D.C. There isn't enough natural gas on the North Slope of Alaska to supply the entire United States of America for over 200 years. If every other natural gas well in the nation were cut off tomorrow morning, 1 billion cubic feet of natural gas are being pumped back into the ground at Prudhoe Bay, Alaska every day by using 747 type jet aircraft engines because the government of this United States will not allow another pipeline to be built down the same corridor as the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, not disturbing the ecology in any manner and supplying for America cheap natural gas for the generation of electricity and the heating of your homes. It's an atrocity that should cause such an uprising amongst the American people that there would be an impeachment from our president down. Listen to the governor of the state of Alaska, March the 18th, 2005. He appeared on the Bill Maher TV show entitled Real Time. He said, quote, "There is potentially enough crude oil on the North Slope of Alaska to last the United States of America for over 200 years. He is correct. But oil will go to $5 a gallon in the very near future. Prepare yourself. You are going to see it. It will go to $7 and $8 a gallon. Mark my words." You're going to say, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say this Quest conference had a prophet there. You know what I'm going to tell you? I'm going to tell you I sat in their board meetings. I heard them talk. They had a 30-year plan. They're doing exactly to you. Listen, Oliver Morgan, Heather Stewart, their senior Wall Street analyst, listen to their prediction. A single political shock could be enough to send oil markets into a panic. In the early 1960s, crude oils, you ready? I hope you're jotting this one down. I'll prove it. Give you names, dates, and place. You'll find that nothing I say today is what Lindsey Williams thinks. I'm documenting every word carefully because I'm saying some potent things that the powers that be don't want said. In the early 1960s, crude oil was chosen as the method of controlling the world. There's one thing that touches every human being on the face of this earth. I care not who they are, whether it be the person who lives in a cardboard shack in a third world country, or whether it be the affluent American who drives an SUV. Oil touches every life. The toothbrush you brush your teeth with tonight, it's made out of plastic. It came from crude oil. The plastic bag in your garbage can at home, it's a crude oil product. The asphalt highway that you drive your automobile in, the polyester clothes you're wearing while you're sitting there in that chair, the drugs at the drugstore, many of them are made from crude oil, the gasoline at the gas pump. There's one thing that touches every human being on the face of the earth, and it was chosen by the power elite in the early 60s as a method of controlling the world. Watch this one now, and please jot this one down because I'm going to give you some startling statements just after this. What you are being charged at the gas pump is a form of taxation. Now, you don't know why, and neither would I, had I not been sitting in their board meetings. Now, I know exactly whom they have told you to blame. They've told you to blame the big oil companies. Now, I must clarify something here. When I was a chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, I was paid by my religious denomination. I never received 1 cent from any oil company. That's the reason that I could afford to write this book. If they had paid me, they would have bought me. But they didn't pay me, and they can't buy me. And I've tried to tell this story for 25 years, and finally Americans are beginning to wake up because they're paying $3 and $4 in California, $4 a gallon at the gas pump. And finally they're knocking on my door and saying, "What is it? Would you like to know who the real villains are?" I would have never known that. No way in this world could I have known this had I not been sitting in their board meetings and listened to what they had to say. I know who you're told to blame. You're told to blame the big oil. Oh, sure, the big oil companies are making all-time record profits. But who is it that's making more than they are? Do you know who they are? No. The average person has not the slightest idea who they are. Now, let me beg you, and I'll talk about it more in the course of my lecture. I hope I can get through all this today. I've got so much to say, and I'm talking as fast as I can. I hope you can pick it up in a hurry with my southern brogue. But I hope you'll listen to one expression. Please listen to their buzzwords. They tell you everything they're going to do. It's just that the average person does not know how to understand what they're saying. And that's the reason I wrote my book, Syndrome of Control, which I'm going to give you a copy of if you'll allow me to when you get my DVDs. And this Syndrome of Control is a full-length, over 200-page book, tells the mindset and the thought patterns of the people that I lived with for 3 years' time. I said the American people must know how these people think, and I wrote a book about it. Who is they, and what are they doing to you? Listen for a buzzword. Very seldom will you ever hear it. Every now and then you'll pick it up on the evening news, and the word is oil bourse. Did you know that Saudi Arabia is not allowed to sell Shell Oil Company a barrel of oil? No. Oh, sure, the oil companies are making record profits. Who's making more than they are? The people. I know what you want me to do. I was hoping somebody would do that. You want me to get ethnic, don't you? I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you the truth today. And you're going to be startled by the truth I give. Because I'm not going to run the normal channel. I'm going to tell you what I lived. And I'll have to tell it like it is, because I was taught by my parents to be an honest Christian, and as a minister of the gospel, I have no choice but to tell it to you as it is. Who are they? You remember a number of months ago, the World Bank and the IMF, oh, come on now. You've got to pick some buzzwords out. These are so important to your life and to your dinner table, you can't imagine it. You remember about 3-4 months ago, the World Bank and the IMF said, oh, and they made themselves look so good. They said, we're going to forgive the loans of every third world country and every nation, every third world nation in the world. We're going to forgive their loans. Oh, didn't they look like such benevolent people? No, not on your life. First thing I thought in my mind was, come on now, nobody forgives a loan unless somebody pays for it. They weren't doing you a favor. You know who paid off the loans of every third world country? You know who paid them off? You did. And you did. And you did, and I did. Where? At the gas pump. You don't know this. I would have never known it had I not sat in their board meetings, had I not rubbed shoulders with them, sat across the dinner table from them. Most authors would have given anything to be able to even rub shoulders with these people one time. I lived with them for 3 years. I don't have to research somebody else's material and write a book. I wrote a book from what I lived for 3 years' time, and I'm here to tell you so you can save your family and your dinner table, and we can help turn America around. Who are they? Saudi Arabia, any oil-producing country of the world. They sell their oil to the men who sit behind the computers in New York and London every day, and they're representatives of the World Bank and the IMF, and they're the ones that make the difference between what Saudi Arabia gets a barrel of oil out of the ground. You know how much Saudi Arabia, how much it cost them to get a barrel of oil out of the ground? Cost them $5. Who's making that between that and $70 a barrel? They sell it to the oil bourse. Their representatives sit behind the computers in New York and London. They tell everybody on the face of the earth what they're going to give them for a barrel of oil for that day. OPEC has nothing to do with it. Shell Oil Company has nothing to do with it. You don't have anything to do with it. Price and demand has nothing to do with it. It's controlled by the men who sit behind the computers in New York and London every day. They're representatives of the World Bank and the IMF, and they take the big cut right off the top before the oil company ever gets theirs, and they could forgive the loans of every third world country because you paid for it at the gas pump, and it's an atrocity. And if the world ever wakes up, they're going to overthrow the powers that be, and the people will be we the people again. Now I'll give you the details. During the administration of President Carter, there was a man by the name of Mr. Henry Kissinger. He went to every leading oil-producing country in the world, and he said, I'd like to cut you a deal. And they said, what? He said, we will send America's oil companies over to produce your fields. We'll make you rich. You'll be the wealthiest people on the face of the earth. You must sign on the dotted line to do two things. You may have heard this. Very few have. I would not had I not been there. You must do two things. Number one, you must denominate all oil sales in American dollars. Since 1960 and the inception of the great oil boom, all oil sales have been done in American dollars. Watch this carefully. You've got to know what to do when you go back to those booths over there in the exhibit room, and you'd better do it today. Number one, you must denominate all oil sales in American dollars. Number two, they said, what's that? We like the first one, solid as a dollar. You remember those days? What's number two? He said, you must take a certain percentage. I wish I knew that percentage. Somehow I missed it back in those days. He said, you must take a certain percentage of everything we buy oil from you with, and you must turn around and invest it in American T-bills and securities. Basically, in a nutshell, the oil-producing countries of the world would buy our national debt, $9 trillion. Watch out. Something has happened. Before I go into what has happened, may I say that two nations wouldn't sign on the dotted line. Who were they? Iraq and Iran. A man appeared with me on a radio talk show the other day. Write his name down. It'll also be on the camera today. His name is Abner Dethridge. He was the man, one of the men sent by the State Department of the United States of America to Saddam Hussein back in February through March of 1990 and said, if you invade Kuwait, the State Department and the United States of America will do nothing about it. It was a setup. It was a trap. Saddam didn't know it. Saddam had to be destroyed because he wouldn't sign on this dotted line. That's the only reason. There are a lot of people in the world that have murdered more people than Saddam Hussein did. I'm not taking up for him. I know he was a wicked man, but I'm telling you the facts. And here he did. What did he do? You remember that Kuwait had been a part of Iraq prior to the last war, and when the world was divided up after the last war by the powers that be, Kuwait was taken away from Iraq, and so the statement, so Saddam said, I want Iraq back. He went and invaded it on August the 1st, 1990, and immediately after that, who came down on him? Why? It was a setup. All President Bush Sr. wanted was an excuse to invade Saddam, to get back at him, because Saddam was not willing to sign on the dotted line in the days of Henry Kissinger. What was the second nation that was not willing to sign on the dotted line? Iran. It's not nuclear. What's happening in Iran has nothing at all to do with nuclear. Iran is years away from producing a nuclear bomb. Why are we using nuclear as an excuse to invade Iran or to do something about Iran or put sanctions on Iran? North Korea has the bomb. China has the bomb. On and on and on. Israel. You could go on and on with the countries that have the bomb. Why have we singled out Iran, who doesn't even have one yet? Because Iran would not sign on the dotted line in the days of Mr. Henry Kissinger, and they must be destroyed at any price, even if you Americans have to pay the lives of your sons to go there and do it. Listen to what Major General Smedley Butler said. President Eisenhower one time was asked, it was stated, Mr. Eisenhower, you are very similar to Smedley Butler. Eisenhower replied, I wish I were half the man Smedley Butler is. He was a general who told the truth. Listen to a statement. War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. Only a small inside group knows what it is about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the very many. Out of war, a few people make huge profits. He said it in his book. Now, there was an unexpected problem that arose. It has arisen within the past 90 days. A number of nations have said, you remember the American dollar has always been used for the sale of oil. Well, something has happened in the past 90 days that the powers that be never expected. It was not supposed to happen. Even they, the World Bank and the IMF and our president and vice president, who are all men, are shaking in their shoes today. I don't know how they sleep at night, because they are between a rock and a hard place. Something is about to happen, and it's drastic. These nations jumped ship within the past 90 days. On March the 20th, Iran said, we're going to establish our own bourse. That's bank. We are not going to use New York banks and the American dollar for the sale of oil anymore. Iran is 5% of the world's oil supply, the third largest oil field in the world, and the fifth largest supplier and exporter to the world. And Iran said, we're not going to use the American dollar anymore. Forget it. We don't trust your $9 trillion national debt. We're not going to hold your securities any longer. We no longer will use the American dollar. And as of March the 20th, they jumped ship. Then Venezuela came along. Chavez. Oh, I know, he's a communist. I don't necessarily care for his ways, but he was big enough to buck the president. And he said, we're not going to use your dollar anymore either. We're going to establish our own bourse. Then Syria jumped ship. Oh no, Syria is not an oil country. A lot of money goes through it though. Syria said, we're not using the dollar anymore. Then Nigeria, 2.8% of the world's oil supply. They ran Shell Oil Company out. They said, when we can put our oil fields back to work again, we're not going to use the American dollar anymore. Norway, come on, I hope you're writing these down. Norway, little insignificant country. Oh, you say, what do they have to do with it? They supply all of the Scandinavian world with oil on any given day. The world's third largest oil supply. They said, we're going to diversify. Then the United Arab Emirates came along. Oh, it wasn't the Ports deal. Come on, give me a break. Ports deal didn't have anything in the world to do with the United Arab Emirates and Dubai. All one and the same, all the consortium over there. You know why President Bush tried to sweep this under the rug and let them have our Ports deal? Because they said, we don't trust your T-bills and your securities anymore. We want hard assets. You know who bought on November the 20th Grand Central Station, downtown New York? They own it now, United Arab Emirates. You know who owns 3 of the largest high-rise buildings in New York today? United Arab Emirates. You know why? They don't trust our $9 trillion national debt any longer. They said, we're not buying any more of your T-bills. We don't trust it. We want your port facilities or else. And the president tried to sweep it under the rug, and a few congressmen woke up and said, President, back off. Now, let me state very emphatically, you 700 plus people sitting right here today, if you became as adamant as those congressmen did when they went to the president and said, our constituents have told us not to let that oil deal go through, or that Ports deal go through. If this 700 people right here went back as upset and angry as those constituents and congressmen did, you could turn the world around. They went back to the president and they said, don't you do it. What did the president do? The president had no choice but to back off and didn't give the United Arab Emirates what they wanted. You know what the United Arab Emirates did the day after? It was February the 28th, 06. You know what the United Arab Emirates did the day after they did not get the Ports deal? You didn't see this. It would have collapsed Wall Street. They pulled $13.5 billion out of the United States of America and securities and sold them off, because they were so angry that the president wouldn't give them the Ports deal, and he must have shaken in his shoes that night. Then the next country to jump ship, Bolivia came along on May the 5th of 2006. I'm sorry, May the 2nd of 2006, and said, we are diversifying. Then the nail that was driven into the coffin. This is my prediction. This is Williamsology, if you may. The nail that was driven into the coffin took place on May the 11th of 2006, when Mr. Putin of Russia said the Soviet Union will now establish its own bourse and will use the ruble as the transfer and sale of oil for the Soviet Union. And as far as I'm concerned, it drove the nail in the coffin of the American dollar. You know why they're not publishing the M3 monetary aggregate anymore after March the 23rd? Isn't it very significant that on March the 20th, Iran said we will no longer use the dollar? March the 23rd, the Federal Reserve said we will no longer publish the M3 monetary aggregate. That's how much money floating around of American dollars in the world, unused. They don't dare publish it. If it did, you would know the truth, and the Federal Reserve won't let you know about it. But I'll tell you, somebody does know about it. Listen to Mr. Masahiro Karawai, who is the head or the chairman of the Asian Development Bank. I have his statement right here as he made it to a public audience. He said, East Asian economies need to prepare for a possible collapse of the U.S. dollar. Oh, you think it's going to last forever, don't you? $9 trillion national debt. The world is losing faith in the American dollar. $9 trillion. You know what that is? I can't even comprehend it. $9 trillion is 28 Eiffel Towers constructed out of pure gold. You think we're not in trouble? 9 billion. Let's take 9 trillion. Let's take 1 billion, for instance. There's 1,000 billion in a trillion. And we're $9 trillion in debt. Let's take 1 billion. That's just a fraction of the total debt. Let's take our 1 billion debt and denominate it to seconds. Tick, 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 tick. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. How long would it take us to denominate 1 billion? Not 9 trillion, and there's 100 billion in a trillion. How long would it take us to accumulate 1 billion seconds from today back until 1973? That's how much trouble we're in. The United States dollar has lost 48% of its purchasing power. Do you remember the day? 1960? You could take one of these. Federal Reserve note, $1 bill. Any bank in America. You could take that into the bank and you could, across the counter, get one of these. Remember that? What would it take today? My son and I were at a radio talk show the other day. It was a gold dealer. I won't tell you their name. And they wanted me to do an hour show with them, and I did. And I don't sell gold, by the way. I just happened to do a radio talk show for them. And when we got through, the owner of the company handed my son this silver dollar, and he said, "I'd like to give this to you for appreciation of your dad being here today." And he looked back at him and he said, "What's that worth?" And he said, "Oh, you'd have to pay $32 for it. It's now $35. Now, watch me. What has happened to the money? My son looked over at me, and he took a $1 bill, and he took a $5 piece of paper, and he said, "Daddy, what's the difference in it?" I said, "None." Then I went to the gift shop. I wanted to buy something for my lovely lady back home. And I went to the gift shop yesterday, and when I got change, they gave me this. I never played with anything any more Monopoly in my life. Look at it, colored. I haven't even seen this in America yet. By the way, Ron Paul says we're headed for a 2-tier currency. Mark my words, you'll probably have it real short. It took 200 years for the United States of America to reach $1 trillion national debt. 200 years. In the past 18 months, we have accrued $1 trillion more national debt. This administration will probably see $10 trillion national debt. Are we in trouble? The federal government is currently spending 20.8% cents out of every $1 that the economy generates. March the 20th, no more M3. Within 1 week of Iran establishing their BOAS, oil went up $5. I predicted it. I predicted it a month in advance that the day that Iran did this, it would happen. And mark my words, what you're hearing here today, you better make some preparations. Oil went up from the day that Iran said we'll establish our BOAS, March the 20th. Oil went up $5. Gold went up $20. Gasoline at the pump went up 25 cents. Listen to this one. In the past 5 years, here's the trend in China's surplus with the United States. In 2001, they had $83 billion surplus. This is the amount of money that they're holding, by the way, in American dollars. You think they're going to be angry when the dollar collapses? You've never seen the like of what Walmart's going to look like. You awake? Yeah, Walmart's where you get it cheap. You wait till inflation hits Walmart. We're all going to be in trouble. In 2002, there was a $103 billion surplus with China. In 2003, $124 billion. 2004, $162 billion. In 2005, $201 billion. And the China representative who came to the White House just recently made this statement, and oh my, did it set off something in my mind. He said, China can stop buying dollar-denominated bonds, and the day they do, what's going to happen to the United States of America? The U.S. is forced to import 400,000 gallons of gasoline a day from other countries. We have set ourselves up for one of the most perilous times that you can ever imagine. By the way, don't get up and go yet. You couldn't eat dinner right now anyway. You may as well stay to the end. I am going to give you some solutions. I'm watching that little thing down there. Whenever it changes colors, I don't know how many minutes I have, but by the way, how many minutes do I have? I can't see the clock. All right. The U.S. back in 1981 had 321 refineries. The U.S. today only has 149 oil refineries. Many plants are operating 24 hours a day with no downtime for maintenance, and the supply is growing in fuel. We're operating at 90% capacity. We're in trouble. Oh, I wish I had the time to tell you the story of the farmers. If that thing hasn't changed from green to red down there before I get through, I'll tell you what happened to my son and I when we were invited to southeastern Colorado and northern Texas just a few weeks ago and met with some of the largest farmers in America, where 40% of the food supply of America is grown. And after 3 days with those farmers, they begged me. They said, Chaplain Williams, please go back to the people in the city. Beg them to look at your DVD of Torn from the Land, a professionally done video done by a Hollywood studio, even wrote their own musical score for it. Beg them, because he said, Chaplain Williams, tell the people in the city that at the price of diesel fuel, we cannot tend our farms after this year. There will be a food shortage in America within a year and a half. You ready for the solution? There is a solution. I wouldn't dare leave you without this. You may not like some of what I have to say. May I say it anyway? I have to tell you the truth. The solution to this is in about 4 parts. The first solution to all of this is spiritual. You can stand everything else if your spiritual foundation is sure. The most valuable things on the face of this earth are spiritual, not physical. I know you're here for the physical, and I am partially too. But the most valuable things in the world, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, kindness, greatest virtues they are. A man walked up to me the other day after I said something like this, and he said, oh, Chaplain, I can't accept this God stuff. He said, I can't see it. I said, do you love your wife? Oh, sure, I love my wife. I said, can you see it? I said, then how do you know you have it? John chapter 8 in the Bible in verse 32 says, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. I'd like to quote that incorrectly. I warn you in advance because the Bible warns about quoting it incorrectly. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will scare you to death. Quite to the contrary. When it happens to the dollar, what is inevitable? You see, if we were allowed to have the oil from the North Slope of Alaska to come to American refineries, the price of gasoline at the gas pump could plummet as much as $1.50 a gallon. But our president cannot allow it. And they will never open up ANWR. Why won't they? Because if they allowed the oil from our own soil to come to American refineries, the other oil-producing countries of the world that haven't jumped ship yet would not be obligated to buy our national securities, our T-bills and our securities, and the dollar would collapse within a month's time. And our president knows it. But yet, on the other hand, if other nations continue to jump ship and don't use the American dollar, and the New York bankers no longer have the control of the oil of the world through the control of the American dollar, the dollar will collapse anyway. Just a matter of time. It's going to happen one way or the other. Had you rather have back the great American dream and some honesty in Washington, D.C., and let the dollar collapse if necessary? And then start all over again? I think it's time to kill the spider, don't you? Not just brush down the cobwebs. So what's happening? Whenever this happens, do you really think that health care is going to be out there for you? Doctors, they don't work free of charge. Neither do hospitals operate free of charge. How about schools? You think a school teacher will continue if there's a collapse of the dollar? You know, I hope that you people realize that right here in this exhibition hall, you have everything you need to protect yourself. You realize that? May I point them out? I've written 2 books on alternative health, one of which I'm going to give you. And I hope you'll drop by in the exhibition hall and take me up on my bargain in a moment. What do you think is going to happen? We are headed for hyperinflation. There are major problems taking place with the dollar. Have you noticed that within the past 4 weeks, the stock market plummeted over 400 points? Did you notice that the dollar is going down and down and down? Have you noticed you're paying more at the grocery store and the hardware store, and that even at Walmart you're paying more? I must give you one item here. They just gave me the minutes I have, and I have time to do it. Will you bear with me? When I was with the farmers in southeastern Colorado, thank you very much, by the way, folks back there, for giving me the time left. And when the farmers, I met with them in southeastern Colorado, they said to me, Chaplain Williams, we've been getting some of the strangest inquiries within the past year. I said, what? They said, real estate agents are writing us and saying, we'd like to buy your farm. They don't ask us for how much. They don't say we'd like to bargain for the price. We just say we want your farm. They said, Chaplain Williams, can you possibly tell us why these real estate agents are contacting us and who it is that wants to buy our farm? They said, we have contacted the real estate agents back again and said, who wants to buy it? And they refuse to tell us who their clients are. You know who they are? Let's take China. Just as an example, you could do this with many nations. Let's take China. An entrepreneur in China who has been making money off of Walmart, and he's got $1 million sitting in his coffers in a bank in China, and he can't do anything with it because China doesn't buy anything from America. America only buys something from China. And all of a sudden he hears Mr. Masahiro Karawa say that the American dollar is about to collapse. He hears Iran say, we're jumping out. We're not going to use the American dollar. We're afraid of it now. And Russia says, we're going to use our own currency and establish our own bourse. And all of a sudden, this entrepreneur in China realizes he's holding $1 million of American money and he can't do anything with it. What does he do? Same thing Dubai did. He contacts a real estate agent in America and he says, I don't care what the price is. He said, I want the farm. He said, just give me anything. I'll buy it at any cost. It doesn't matter. He wants to get rid of his American dollars. And this is happening all over the world. That loan that you took out at the bank, the loan, you borrowed money. You know that the bank has a right to sell that paper? If they need more money to operate their bank, they can sell your mortgage to anybody in the world they need in order to get operating funds. Suppose they sell it to an Arab. Suppose they sell it to a Chinese. Suppose they sell it to someone in Japan. They could sell it to someone in Afghanistan or Iran or Iraq. And there wouldn't be a thing in the world you could do about it because it's in the fine print that they can sell it to anybody they want to. And when America's dollar continues to slide as it's doing right now, do you think they'll have any mercy on you when you can't make your house payment if they're an Arab or a Chinese or a Japanese? And I have nothing against those people. I love them. My wife is from a foreign country. I brought her into America. But can you imagine what they're going to do when you can't make your payment? It's dangerous, folks. You'd better have a roof over your head. And I said to these farmers, I said, who wants to buy your farm? Maybe a Chinese, maybe an Arab. It doesn't matter. They want to get out of their American dollars. They're scared to death of our currency and $9 trillion national debt. Now, right over here in this exhibition hall, and by the way, the only thing I have is my books and my DVDs. So don't think that I'm in cahoots with anybody in that exhibition hall. I'm not. I didn't even know them until I got here. But I want to tell you what's over there. First of all, you think health care is going to be around. Whenever the dollar continues its plummet and inflation goes through the roof, the hospital, modern-day health care system will not be there for you as it is today. I had a chiropractor from Florida drop my exhibit booth on yesterday, and I asked him, I said, I want to know about that square wave machine over there. I wasn't quite sure. I heard the speaker in here that day. It fascinated me because I'm the author of 2 books on alternative health. And I said to the chiropractor, I said, that square wave machine, does it work? He said, you better believe it does. I have them in my office. I said, does it get rid of virus and bacteria and fungus? He said, you better believe it does. I wouldn't be without it. He said, you need one. Do you need one? Everybody here needs one. What good's the dollar going to do? What good's it going to do when you have to pay a fortune and your dollar plummets to lower than what it is right? You better buy what you're going to buy today. And I'm not advertising for those people. I'm telling you what's over there. And this chiropractor said it works. If you had to pay only $3,000, I think that's what they're charging for it, about $3,000 today, you may be paying $5,000 6 months from now. Why? Because I know the other day I had to buy a DVD machine to make DVDs. The price went up $100 in 30 days. Why? Oh, DVD machines a year ago cost $1,500. They went down to $700. Before I could buy one, they went back up to $800. And I asked the people at CCI in Seattle, Washington, I said, why'd they go back up? And they said they went up because the dollar is plummeting. It's worth so much less. We get it from China, and China's charging us according to the value of the American dollar. Folks, watch out. Hyperinflation is here, and it's going to continue, and the dollar is where it's going, and mark my words, it's all planned. Every bit of it is according to their agenda. They know what they're doing, and you and I are considered as nothing but pawns in the game. But I have a message for them. It's time that 700 people from Quest wake up and go back home and do something about it. You're going to have to be responsible for your own health, and you'd better make preparations right now. And Quest has done a marvelous job. I congratulate all of the workers and founders and staff at Quest. They have carefully, meticulously examined every product and every person in their exhibit hall. You can depend on them. Quest backs them up. Go over there and take care of your health care today. You may not be able to do it 6 months from now. Next door to me, right, the booth next to mine, is a gold dealer. No, I don't make a penny off of what he sells. I was over here in these little private meetings, you know, we have in the afternoon. I was over there yesterday afternoon, and people were asking me questions, and I gave a portion of what I'm giving today. And one man raised his hand. He said, Chaplain, I want to tell everybody here. Oh, he was so excited he didn't know what to do. He said, I want to tell everybody here that there's a gold dealer up in Washington State that I can send a wire transfer from right down here where we are in Cancun. And he said, from what you've said today about what's going to happen to the dollar and what's taking place in oil, I'm going to send a wire this afternoon and have my gold shipped to me before I get back to Washington State. I hope he did it. It is going to go to $1,000 an ounce. It wouldn't surprise me if it didn't go to $2,000 an ounce. Gold and oil are tied together. Peter Jacobs. Peter Jacobs is a very wealthy gold dealer in Australia. He spoke at a church in near where I live just the other day in Scottsdale, Arizona. Peter Jacobs, one of the wealthiest men in gold, private individuals in the world, and Peter Jacobs said, gold is going to $1,000 an ounce. Now, gold has almost priced most of us out of the market already. You better get in while you can. I remember what they did back in 1984. I know what they can do again. It's the only thing where you're still seeing great value. Over here in the exhibit hall, I'm begging of you, there are so many exhibitors there that can save your dinner table and that can spare you from financial ruin. And that's why you're here at Quest. I wrote this book, Syndrome of Control, for the purpose of telling the mindset of the financial people of the world. The men I rubbed shoulders with for 3 years. There's one thing I'd like to stress this afternoon if I can. Listen to their buzzwords. There was one thing that I learned at Prudhoe Bay when I lived with these people and sat in their board meetings, that I learned to listen to their buzzwords. They tell you everything they're going to do, and they tell you in advance of their doing it. Think back with me for a moment. When President Bush Sr. was President of the United States of America, do you remember the buzzwords, 1,000 points of light? Remember it? Did that mean anything to you? Meant something to him. Meant something to me. Because I heard it. New World Order. Did that mean anything when you first heard it? Probably not. I picked it up immediately. I was recently watching Good Morning America. I very seldom watch the news because I know it's all planned anyway. But I was watching Good Morning America one morning, and George Bush Sr. was being interviewed. And the question was asked him by the host on Good Morning America, Mr. Bush, do you ever watch the morning news? You know, valid question. Why not? You ever watch the morning news? You know what his answer was? No. She kind of looked stunned for a moment and looked back at him and said, well, Mr. Bush, why don't you watch the morning news? You ready? I heard it with my own ears. He said, because I already know what it's going to be. Now, very quickly, the first thing you need to do is establish a spiritual foundation. I personally am a born-again Christian. You have a right in America to choose your own religion, thank God. And I'm so glad that we have that freedom, and you choose as you wish. But you establish a spiritual foundation, and mine is the blood of Jesus Christ. And through the cross of Calvary, I know that I'm safe regardless of what takes place in this life. Establish that foundation in Jesus Christ, and be sure that you're not on sinking sand, but you're on the solid rock. And when you are, no matter what takes place to the dollar, or whether you gain or lose, matters not, you still will have peace, and your family will still be secure, and your husband and wife will still be together. Looking for a job? Joe Smith started out the day early, having set his alarm clock, made in Japan, for 6 a.m. While with his coffee pot, made in China, was perking, he shaved with his electric razor, made in Hong Kong. He put on a dress shirt, made in Sri Lanka, design jeans made in Singapore, and tennis shoes made in Korea. After cooking his breakfast in his new electric skillet made in India, he sat down with his calculator made in Mexico to see how much he could spend today. After setting his watch made in Taiwan to a radio made in India, he got in his car in his search for a good-paying American job. His car made in Germany. At the end of yet another discouraging and fruitless day, checking his calculator made in Brazil, poured himself a glass of wine made in France, and turned on his new TV made in Indonesia, and then wondered why he couldn't find a good-paying job in America. My book, To Seduce a Nation. I know we're in Mexico, but I'd like to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America in a way that you've not seen before. Because my book, To Seduce a Nation, tells us what they have turned us into, but what we should be. So, hypothetically, may I pretend there's a flag there? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the democracy. Oh, what's the matter? You're not asleep, are you? Now, come on. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the Republic. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States of America says, every state in this union shall guarantee, the United States government shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. They've changed us into a democracy. I have a message for them. Under a democracy, people are we the sheeple. Under a republic, we are we the people. By God's grace, we will have back our constitutional republic, and you can find the answers right here at Quest. Thank you for the privilege of allowing me here today.